Come out of the closet. I didn't even notice the moment I stopped breathing. A second ago, everything was normal. Routine. My keys rattled in the lock as I stepped inside, my boots heavy from the rain. The apartment smelled of garlic and butter, the way it always did when Ethan cooked. A familiar comfort. Then I heard him. "Babe?" His voice floated from the kitchen, casual, warm, like any other night. "You're home early." I opened my mouth to answer, but something made me pause. A small, stupid thing. Ethan never called me babe. Not once in 4 years. It was always Ash, or baby, or hey, dummy if he was being playful. I shook it off. Maybe I misheard. Maybe I was just tired. I dropped my purse onto the entryway table, and that's when I saw it, his phone. Face up, unlocked. The bright screen glowed against the wood, displaying a missed call. From me. My stomach tightened. Ethan never left his phone lying around, let alone unlocked. I reached for it, my fingers hesitant, as if touching it might shatter some fragile illusion. Then, with a kind of detached curiosity, I did the only logical thing. I called him. A distant chime echoed through the apartment. Not from the kitchen. Not from anywhere near where Ethan's voice had come from. The sound drifted from the hallway closet. A single, hollow ring. Then another. I turned slowly, pulse hammering against my ribs. The closet door was shut, a narrow sliver of darkness visible between the wood and the frame. My phone kept ringing, the vibration sharp in my palm. Then it stopped. And from behind the door, a voice whispered, low, urgent, barely more than breath. "Don't go in the kitchen." "It's not me." My spine locked. For a split second, my brain refused to process the words. A trick. An echo. My own paranoia feeding me nonsense. The kitchen was only a few steps away. I could smell something frying, the pop of oil barely audible over the rush of blood in my ears. But I couldn't move. My feet stayed planted, my body rigid with something deeper than fear, something primal. The closet door stood before me, a silent question. My fingers twitched. I wanted to run. I wanted to pretend I hadn't heard anything. Instead, I reached for the handle. And slowly, ever so slowly, I pulled it open. The darkness inside the closet yawned open, thick and absolute. My own reflection ghosted back at me in the hallway mirror, a pale blur in the dim light. The scent of fabric softener and old wood filled my nose, so painfully normal that for a second, I thought I'd imagined it. Then something moved. Not a scurry, not the quiet shift of a coat settling on its hanger, something deeper, deliberate. A presence in the dark, breathing with me, waiting. My skin prickled, my muscles coiling as my brain screamed at me to run, but my hand stayed frozen on the knob. And then, so close I could feel it, his voice again. "Ash," it whispered. My name, soft, desperate. "Please, don't move." A chill shot through my ribs, tightening around my lungs. I wanted to slam the door, to shut whatever this was back inside, but my body had turned to stone. I could hear him, his voice, his breath, Ethan's breath, inside the closet, but it was impossible. Because Ethan was in the kitchen. Something pressed forward, just enough for the faintest sliver of a face to catch the dim glow from the hallway. It was him. But wrong. His eyes, usually warm, were wide and too dark, like twin pools of ink swallowing the dim light. His face was pale, damp, his lips cracked like he'd been whispering for hours. My own breath stuttered, horror rising in my throat like bile. I should have screamed. I should have bolted. Instead, I croaked out one broken word. "Ethan?" A small, jerky nod. His Adam's apple bobbed, his breathing uneven. "Yes." His voice barely made it past his lips. "I don't know who that is in the kitchen. But it's not me." My vision swam. My heart pounded so hard I thought my ribs might crack. Behind me, from the kitchen, I heard a chair scrape against the floor. A casual movement, like someone shifting their weight. Then the sound of something wet sizzling in the pan, the scent of searing meat thickening. "Ash, babe?" The other voice, that voice, called again. Amused. Familiar. "Aren't you coming?" Ethan's fingers twitched in the dark. He wasn't blinking. "Ash," he whispered. "Please. Don't let it know you're scared." The air around me seemed to stretch, tighten. I forced myself to swallow, to straighten my back. I had two choices: turn and walk into the kitchen like nothing was wrong, or stand here trembling in front of a thing that looked like my husband, trapped in my own goddamn hallway closet. Neither choice felt like survival. But I had to decide. The silence stretched so thin it felt like it might snap. My pulse was a drum against my ribs, each beat pressing against the walls of my skull. My mind clawed for logic, for some explanation that made sense. There had to be one. Maybe I was having a stress-induced hallucination. Maybe Ethan had come home early, somehow got locked in the closet, and I was just losing my goddamn mind. But then his fingers, pale and trembling, dug into my wrist. His grip was weak, clammy, but insistent. "Please," he whispered. "You have to listen to me. Don't go in there." The sound of my name being called from the kitchen again sent a fresh jolt of terror down my spine. The voice was perfect, too perfect. No hesitation. No urgency. Just casual, like we had all the time in the world. I turned my head slightly, just enough to peek toward the kitchen. The doorway was a gaping rectangle of darkness beyond the warm glow of the hallway. My brain tried to fill in the gaps: Ethan standing by the stove, the shape of his shoulders, the movement of his hands, but my gut was screaming at me not to look. A soft, wet sound came from inside the closet. Like a swallowed sob. I turned back just in time to see Ethan's lips part, his breath trembling. "I don't know how long it's been here," he whispered. "I don't know how it got in. But it's been watching you." The words were knives against my skin. And then, the worst part. From the kitchen, a chuckle. Low. Easy. Ethan's laugh. "Sweetheart," the voice called, playful now. Mocking. "You're acting weird. Come on, just eat with me." Something in my gut twisted so hard I thought I might throw up. I knew that voice. That laugh. I'd loved it for years. But now, stripped of comfort, stripped of warmth, it was like hearing a song played just slightly off-key. The grip on my wrist tightened. "Please, Ash." Ethan, closet Ethan, was shaking now, his whisper barely holding together. "If you go in there, you won't come back." My breath hitched. My feet refused to move. From the kitchen, the sound of a plate being set down. A fork clinking against porcelain. "Baby," the voice called again, soft, patient. "Aren't you hungry?" I turned my head toward the kitchen, just slightly. And then it stepped into the doorway. It stood in the kitchen's threshold, almost him. Same height. Same build. Same way the light caught against the sharp cut of his jaw. But the way it moved, it was wrong. Like it was wearing Ethan's body like an ill-fitting suit, adjusting to it in real time. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. The thing pretending to be my husband smiled. It was almost perfect. But Ethan never smiled like that, so wide, so full of teeth, like it was excited to see how this would play out. "Why are you standing there?" it asked. Ethan's voice. So casual. Like we were just talking about dinner. Like it didn't know I could see the truth. From inside the closet, Ethan's grip on my wrist was a vice now. His breath was shallow, ragged, like he was running out of time. "Shut the door," he whispered. "Shut the door and don't move." I swallowed hard. The thing in the kitchen tilted its head. Not in confusion, in curiosity. like it was watching something squirm. Its fingers flexed at its sides. The house felt too small. Too quiet. Like the air had thinned, like time had hiccuped. The kitchen light flickered, and in that fraction of a second, its shape blurred. My body screamed at me to run. To bolt down the hall, to the door, to anywhere but here. But something deep inside me, something more primal, more terrified than I had ever known myself to be, understood. If I ran, it would chase me. And if it caught me, it would be worse than dying. I gripped the closet door with my free hand and started pulling it closed, slow, too slow. The thing's head jerked, like it had noticed something new. It stepped forward. I yanked the door shut. And then, it laughed. A sharp, delighted, inhuman sound. From the other side of the thin wooden door, its voice came low, mocking. "Ashley," it cooed. "Come on. You don't really believe that, do you?" A shiver ran straight through my bones. Behind me, Ethan let out a shaking breath. "Don't answer it," he mouthed. I pressed my back against the door, hands shaking, trying to still my breathing. Trying not to let it hear how terrified I was. On the other side, the thing let out a soft hum. Like it was thinking. And then, so quiet I almost didn't catch it. "I can wait." Silence. Thick, suffocating, like the air itself had solidified around us. I could hear everything, the shallow rhythm of Ethan's breathing, the blood pounding in my ears, the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. But beyond that, past the thin wood of the closet door, nothing. It was still out there. Waiting. I could feel it. Ethan's fingers were still locked around my wrist, his grip cold, trembling. I turned to him in the suffocating darkness, barely able to make out his face. His eyes were wide, reflecting the dim glow seeping in from under the door. His lips moved without sound. "Do not open it." Like I needed the warning. My phone was still clenched in my other hand, slick with sweat. My stomach twisted as I looked at the screen. No signal. Of course. Ethan shifted slightly beside me, moving with careful, measured slowness, and I realized he was holding something. A small, black object, clenched tight in his fist. I recognized it instantly. His pocket knife. He had given it to me once, years ago, as a joke, a welcome gift when I moved in. "This place is old," he'd said, grinning. "Might be ghosts. You never know." It didn't feel like a joke now. He saw me looking and, still moving painfully slow, he pressed the knife into my palm, closing my fingers over it. His grip was firm, urgent. "If it opens the door, don't let it take you." The words hit me like a punch to the ribs. I wanted to scream. To cry. To demand, "What the hell is happening?" But I couldn't. Because deep down, in the marrow of my bones, I already knew. Something wasn't right about Ethan's voice in the kitchen. About the thing wearing his shape, the thing that smiled too wide, the thing that moved like it was still figuring out how to be human. And it was still out there. Waiting. A shadow shifted under the door. I bit down hard on my lip, forcing myself not to gasp. The light from the hallway dimmed slightly. It was standing right outside. My fingers clenched tighter around the knife. Ethan's hand pressed against mine, like he was silently telling me, "Wait. Just wait." And then, the doorknob twitched. My breath locked in my throat. Another twitch. Then a slow, deliberate turn. The thing was testing it. Ethan's fingers dug into my skin. A soft chuckle came from the other side. So close. Too close. The door shuddered like something had leaned against it. And then, a whisper. "Ashley," it murmured, so gently, so sweetly. "You're scaring me." "No. No. Come out. Please." Ethan's voice. Perfectly Ethan. But not him. The door rattled. Harder this time. Not a knock, more like it was feeling. Testing its patience. And then the whisper changed. Lower. Hungrier. I know you're in there. A thin, needle-sharp noise crawled through the air, like nails scraping against wood. The doorknob twisted violently. I clamped a hand over my mouth, pushing myself deeper into the closet. Ethan let go of me. I turned to him in the dark, panicked, but he was already moving. His hand ghosted over my knee, pressing down. Stay still. The door shook again. A long silence. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Moving away. 1, 2, 3. Then, nothing. For a long time, we didn't breathe. We sat there, paralyzed in the dark, listening to the house settle around us. And then, finally, when I thought I might go insane from the silence, Ethan's breath came, shaky, ragged. We have to get out. Not yet. Ethan's whisper barely made it past his lips, but I felt it like a shock to my spine. We have to get out. I wanted to nod. To move. To do anything but sit there, pressed against the door, with that thing still somewhere in the house. But my body wouldn't obey me. My limbs were locked in place, stiff with terror. Ethan shifted beside me, so careful, so quiet. The floorboards barely creaked as he reached for the closet's back wall. I didn't understand what he was doing until his fingers brushed against the edge of the old paneling. A crawl space. My breath hitched. I'd forgotten it was even there. When we first moved in, Ethan joked about it, tiny escape route, just in case. Perfect for horror movie scenarios. I'd laughed at the time. I wasn't laughing now. He turned to me in the darkness, eyes locked onto mine, and mouthed, "Go first." I swallowed hard, my pulse a hammer against my ribs. The knife in my hand felt useless, too small, too insignificant against whatever the hell was out there. But I moved. I shifted toward the panel, fingers slipping against the wood. Old paint peeled beneath my nails as I pried it open. The space beyond was narrow, cramped, but it was an exit. I slid in, twisting my body to fit, every nerve screaming at me to move faster. Ethan followed, pressing in behind me. The air inside was thick, dust-heavy. I could barely see. Then. A creak. The closet door. Opening. I bit down on my lips so hard I tasted blood. Ethan's hands found my shoulders, pushing me forward. A voice slithered into the crawl space. Not a whisper anymore. Not pretending. I found you. Ethan shoved me forward so hard I almost fell. We ran. Crawling, scrambling, pulling ourselves through the darkness. The space was too tight, too suffocating, but we didn't stop. We couldn't stop. Something moved behind us. It was coming. Ethan's breath was ragged, my pulse roaring in my ears. My fingers slammed against wood, the exit hatch. I shoved it open, tumbling into the basement. Ethan was right behind me, crashing onto the concrete floor. For a second, neither of us moved. We just lay there, gasping. Listening. The crawl space behind us, silent. No footsteps. No breathing. Nothing. But I knew, it wasn't over. Ethan rolled onto his back, chest heaving. His face was pale, his eyes too wide. We can't stay here, he choked out. I swallowed, forcing myself upright. My body still trembled. I know. A long silence stretched between us. Then, from upstairs, the floor creaked. And Ethan's voice, that voice, drifted down to us, casual. Smiling. Where are you going, babe? I stopped breathing. The voice from upstairs was wrong. Too familiar. too casual. It wasn't a growl or a snarl, not some monstrous, distorted sound. No. It sounded exactly like Ethan. I turned my head slowly, my neck stiff, and looked at the real Ethan lying on the basement floor next to me. His face was frozen, his lips slightly parted, his skin pale with sweat. His chest rose and fell in shallow, trembling breaths. He heard it too. The air between us was thick with terror, like neither of us wanted to be the first to break it. Then, footsteps. Slow. Unhurried. Pacing above us, right where the living room should be. It was walking. "You're scaring me, babe," it called again, perfectly normal. As if we'd just had a stupid argument and I stormed off. As if I'd hidden in the basement like a sulking child. The voice grinned as it spoke. I could hear it in the tone. Like it knew something I didn't. Ethan grabbed my wrist, squeezing too hard. He shook his head once, fast. A warning. Don't answer. I wouldn't. But the silence didn't last. Something scraped against the floor above us. A slow, deliberate drag, like a chair being moved. My stomach twisted. "You're making this difficult." The sound stopped. And then, I heard it moving toward the basement door. I felt Ethan tense, his hand tightening around my wrist. My skin burned under his grip, but I didn't pull away. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. The basement door handle turned. Once. Twice. A pause. Then, knocking. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just 3 soft, steady taps. Polite. Like a guest. My hands clenched into fists. I forced myself not to look at Ethan, because I already knew what I'd see, the same cold terror twisting through my own gut. "Let me in, babe." No. 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 I squeezed my eyes shut, biting down on my lips so hard I tasted blood. Then, something changed. The air shifted, the basement darkness thickening. A slow, crawling cold seeped into my skin, my bones, like the heat was being sucked from the air itself. And suddenly, it wasn't just outside the door anymore. It was here. I knew it before I even opened my eyes. I felt it. The basement wasn't empty. We weren't alone. A breath of cold air tickled my neck. And a voice, low, twisted, wrong, whispered right behind me. "You should have stayed in the closet."